encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. If you want to be a serious Bible student, a successful servant, and a powerful preacher, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Preachers in Training. My name is Robert Hatfield, and this is the podcast where we talk about all things preaching and ministry. On today's episode, we're going to challenge ourselves a little bit and talk about a topic that perhaps you've preached on. If you haven't, maybe it's about time to do it. But certainly is something that we need to turn the mirror on ourselves and do a little self-examination as preachers and ministers. And we're talking about social media. I titled the episode An Appeal About Social Media. Here to help us discuss this topic, I don't know, you drew the short straw? I'm not sure. The expert of social media, Adam Faughn. Welcome back.
I'm not sure if I'm going to say it's a privilege to be with you this time or not.
I understand.
No, it's always a joy. I love being on with you.
Well, I appreciate you coming, and we're excited about the episode today and looking forward to some of the things that we have to discuss. A lot of really neat books have come out lately on this subject, and I know that you're an avid reader. Perhaps one of the ones that's been most transformative for me, and I think that might be the case for you as well, is this one, 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You by Tony Reinke. Not a book about social media per se, obviously on the phone, but he deals a lot with social media in here because, I mean, what are you doing on your phone all the time? It's scrolling through Facebook and stuff, right? So it's a pretty neat book. I can't endorse every little thing that he says in there, 215, 220 pages or something like that, but a neat book you ought to check out if you haven't done so already. And perhaps some of our thoughts coming from some gleanings from this book, right?
Yeah. Where we're going to take this, I hope, is later in the book, he kind of gives a list of 10 questions. As you said, it's more just about the phone use overall. I taught a class at Central. The elders asked me to teach a class during the winter quarter. It was we called it two mini classes. The first half of the quarter was on the Christian addictions, and then the second part of the class was on the Christian and social media. And I ended that entire class, that entire social media part, with a series of 10 questions that he asked. I adapted them more for social media than just the smartphone, and also kind of changed some of the language here and there. But, the credit goes to him as far as the 10 questions. I just kind of, not twisted them, but changed them a little bit for our specific purpose. And so hopefully we can kind of use those to kind of figure out where we're going the next few minutes and maybe not, totally get in trouble with everybody.
It is admittedly somewhat of a touchy subject. When I've preached on it here at Gold Hill and even in other opportunities, sometimes I'm asked to preach on media, I guess, because of the podcast thing. And, most people receive it pretty well, especially when we try and keep it balanced, and speak in principles. We're not saying, you ought to post about this political party versus that one, but, what can be sometimes difficult is getting specific in while you're trying to also be generic enough to cover all the principles and all the age groups and age ranges of this sort of thing. I know the church at Central, there's a wonderful congregation. You receive good feedback, positive feedback. Is this something Christians are wanting to hear more often and more biblical guidance regarding these topics?
I think so. We got really good feedback from that class. And like you said, the challenge, that really was the challenge of, you want to give the principles, but sometimes you have to give examples and to prove, to show the principle or to illustrate the principle. So, how do you do that? But really the feedback I got more positively was from some of our older folks who kind of dabble in social media a little bit, but really even some of them just said, I didn't realize I was doing some of this stuff. I just kind of did what everybody else did. And it's because it's a new toy in a lot of ways. And sometimes we get a new toy, we just play with it. Don't think about the wisdom of what we're doing with it.
Yeah, that's right. And I think now transitioning specifically to the purposes of covering that here on this podcast, it can present a real temptation for us as preachers and ministers too. I mean, a lot of the work, especially in the COVID age, that I've done has been on Facebook, I mean,
Mhm.
where online videos or even interpersonal communication with church members. You know, sometimes Facebook Messenger is the primary means of communication. I think you and I scheduled this podcast episode over
Yeah,
Facebook. So,
absolutely.
of course, we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater here, right? I mean, and we don't have to have that discussion. I think if you're listening to a podcast, you probably understand the merits as well as the potential pitfalls of social media.
Hmm.
Um, that having been said, though, and Reinke brings this out, and perhaps I'm stepping a little bit on where we're going, but it is so easy to just mindlessly scroll. And what can begin as a good thing, right? I need to get on there and check on this or post about this or promote this for the church or whatever. Next thing you know, 45 minutes later, you sort of wake up out of the social media stupor and realize how much time you've just wasted. And that's just one example of a pitfall for ministers and preachers.
Yeah, it is. And one of the places we're going to go with one of the questions also is not just the 45 minutes of time, but 45 times a day. Just
Yeah, well, that's
I've
right.
got an extra 30 seconds, so I'll jump on there instead of filling those 30 seconds with prayer or just with
Yeah.
letting your brain rest for a few moments or whatever it is. So
Well, and that's a good point about letting your brain rest too, because many of us have experienced burnout just because of the negativity that is
mhm,
sometimes there, or maybe we see something from a fellow Christian that maybe we just as soon not have seen,
yeah,
or not be responsible now for knowing. And so, anyway, there's certainly something that's appropriate here. And what I want to encourage our listeners and viewers to do today is to make this personal for you. Don't take this as something that you can go and preach to your congregation soon. I mean, maybe that's a good thing to do, but let's start by having some introspection and making sure that we're being the people that we ought to be on social media as well as off. Um,
right.
shall we dive into the observations that we have for today?
Sure. All right. So the first question, so some of these are going to be word for word from his book. Some I've just twisted, a little bit the wording to kind of fit more for social media or for just kind of clean up not filthy language, but just make it a little clearer. From I'm not too bright, so sometimes it makes things easier to understand. But question number one, as he put it, is: do my habits expose an underlying addiction to untimely amusements? Now,
Mm.
I don't talk that way, but but basically the idea is: am I addicted to stuff that just doesn't matter? And for sure, it
Uh,
doesn't matter for the time. I'm just filling my time with being entertained when I should be doing something else. I should be working. I should be studying. I should be spending time with my family. I should be, but I'd have to check my phone to, see what's going on the other side of the world, someplace I'll never go. Yeah, I've got to
mhm.
scroll through Twitter again because I'm sure the world changed in the last 47 seconds, And so are we just, are we exposing in ourselves that I like the way you put that underlying addiction. Nobody's going to say, "Hey, I'm addicted to untimely amusements," but are our habits exposing that?
Yeah, untimely amusements, absolutely.
That's not a
um,
phrase I'll be stealing for a sermon anytime soon. 'Cause I had to look it up, figure out what it meant.
that's exactly right. Yeah, of course, there's a lot that could be said about this. We do need to consider how much time we're spending on this and be real with ourselves about it, and juggle the delicate balance between actually having a good reason to be on it,
Hmm.
at the very least being intentional, right? I hate to come down too hard because there is an aspect of social media that can be nice. It's somewhat of a relief. It's nice
Hmm.
to look at people's pictures or wish them happy birthday or see pictures of little kids or whatever it is that's going on. Share in people's lives in that way, which is a good thing. Don't want to put that down, but considering how much time we're spending on that as we go throughout our day, the screen time, if you're an iOS user, the screen time statistics can be rather eye-opening on your phone. When your phone says you spent 180 hours on Facebook last week, or something like that, and it's like, whoa, what just happened here?
You spent
Something.
more time than there are hours in a week. That's pretty impressive.
How about that, right?
Wow, that's a lot. But go back to his question a little bit. There is such a thing as, I guess you could say, timely amusements. I mean, there is a time to be entertained and to be
Right.
amused and have fun. But how much time are we spending, and when are we spending that time when we should be doing things that are more important, more pressing, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Where do we go next? What's number two?
Question number two, and this is the one where I hope a lot of preachers, including the one who's talking, really listen.
Mm.
Do my habits reveal a compulsive desire to be seen and affirmed?
Oh,
I mean, I don't even know what to say beyond that.
yeah,
As I was kind of thinking about what to say when you asked me questions and did the interview. I thought that question kind of answers itself.
yeah.
When I decide to put something on whatever social media platform that I'm putting it on, that's fine. But is the underlying reason that I just want people to see me, or to to like my post, love my post, instead of I'm trying to share the gospel and glorify God or build up the church or whatever happens to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is tempting when you put something out there to check and say, well, how many views has this gotten? How many
Hmm.
likes? How many shares? Um, uh, Again, there's sort of a delicate balance here, right?
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, I have to police my heart, and I know the reasons why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. We need to quote unquote advertise, right? I know
Right.
you and I were both part of a conversation, and I think I introduced it into the group of preachers that's how I struggle with this, self promotion versus just spreading the word and getting it out there.
Hmm.
And I think the consensus was just the fact that we're thinking about these sorts of things means that perhaps our head's in a good place. But we really have to watch this a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And the idea of I've got to put something out there every single day or three times a day or five times a day.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? Is it because my face has to be in front of people all the time, or
Hmm.
so I just like that, a compulsive desire to be seen. Yes, it's important to share things if we're on these platforms, but
Yeah.
the why is a big deal. So
Hmm.
number three,
Okay.
do my habits distract me from genuine communion with God?
Mm.
And I really like the way he presented that question, because it wasn't just, does my time do it? Or it wasn't just, is what I'm sharing or what I'm seeing do it? It's all of it. Is anything I'm doing on social media, competing with my desire, or my really to have a true communion with God? Is it taking away that relationship because either of the time or of the things I'm sharing or of the things I'm seeing?
Mm. Yeah, that's true. Keeping the main thing, right?
Hmm.
And doing that consistently. That has been so important for me. I mean, it always is, but in the last 12 months, again, and sometimes I've gotten out of balance with this, right? And I have to, I'm starting to feel it somewhat emotionally. I'm feeling drained. I'm feeling, don't have a lot of desire to get up, and I have to stop and realize, hey, listen, dude, it's because you've been unplugged for a while. You need to go and plug back in.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we're spending so much time on social media, we're preachers, right?
Yeah.
And we're studying for sermons, but if we're spending so much time on social media, there's no study for ourselves or no time in prayer. I mean, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And again, it's not just the time thing; it's also the what we're consuming thing. But I'm sure that that the time plays a big role in that.
Yeah.
Um, it's similar to the next question he asks, because this has to do with eternal matters too. He says, "Do my habits have my habits provided an easy escape from deep thinking about?" And he lists some things. I changed the list a little bit, but deep thinking about things like my death, the return of Jesus, eternity.
Mm.
In other words, am I only thinking about the here and now because that's what I'm seeing on social media, or am I doing some deep thinking about the end of my life, the end of all things, heaven, hell, those sorts of things? And because we spend so much time in the immediate on social media, a lot of times it takes away our thinking from those absolutely most important things. In times kind of matters that need to be in our thinking a lot to motivate us to do what's most important.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. Sometimes if I'm just honest, I find myself, wanting to avoid maybe some harder work.
Hmm.
And so, I need to do this, or I need to spend a little more time, revamping that graphic, or, Facebook changed their resolution sizes again. So I really need to go. This is important work that I'm doing. Yeah.
That's right,
Yeah.
of course.
Right.
Absolutely. But are we spending time thinking about the stuff that really should motivate us, and that is,
Yeah.
where am I going when this life is over?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Instead of just what happened 30 seconds ago in in Panama or something, because we can find it out in no time.
Well, that's right.
So,
Or what debate is going on right now that
yeah,
I need
exactly.
to step in and try and settle the matter. You know, it's just
Yeah, because everybody listens to me, of
yeah.
course.
Settle issues are often settled on social media.
Absolutely. I mean, don't you know it's the 37th comment that's the one that sells the matter? If we just wait for that 37th comment and put it in, we'd solve it. That's all there's to it.
If your sarcasm detector is not going off, then you need to replace the batteries.
All right. So number 5, and I would hope this would not be a an issue for preachers, but let's be honest, it is at times.
Yeah.
Do my habits preoccupy me with the pursuit of worldly success?
Hmm.
And again, I like the way he worked. And I can't remember if I changed that question. Up. By the way, I don't have the book in front of me because someone borrowed it from me, so I can't remember which questions I changed a little bit, which ones I didn't. But I really like the concept of that one because he doesn't start listing types of worldly success. Anything that's not spiritual success at a level is a worldly success. And is that
Hmm.
what I'm thinking about? Am I scrolling through social media looking for the latest stock tips, or am I scrolling looking for encouraging things?
Mm.
That could be one. Um, and there's a lot of other things that we could spend our time trying to, and it goes back to what you said as well. Is the only reason I'm on there see how many followers I can have or how many likes I can get, or
Hmm.
is it to spread the good news?
Mm. Yeah, you're right. And I think as preachers, we can get sort of caught up in this entrepreneurial marketing jargon that is so readily available on the internet these days. It's something you said a
Hmm.
minute ago. You know, why do I feel the need to post 3 times a day? You know, and the business experts say that if you're going to be a leader and have a platform, you ought to post at 9 and 11 and 2 and 6 or something like that every day, and make sure that every post is unique across all platforms and blah blah blah. And listen, I guess there's some meat there and some bones that you could spit out, right? Maybe some good things that you could do or good practices you could have, but at the end of the day, I mean, why? Face-to-face contact and what we're doing in quote unquote real life, it still is more important than whatever happens in the virtual realm. So, and I
Oh, and
said
those
that on a
sorts of things.
podcast, by the way.
Well, absolutely, and those sorts of things. And look, I do a great deal of the social media here at Central, but some of that's I take it on myself. I'll
Yeah,
admit that. But
yeah.
our secretary does a lot of it too. But if you're at a larger congregation, or maybe you have somebody who just loves social media, why not offload that to somebody else? Because yeah, there is, like you said, there's some meat and bones. If somebody spends some time making a post, you want somebody to see it,
Yes.
because it's hopefully spreading encouragement or teaching or whatever. But that doesn't mean the preacher has to do all of it, if possible. In
Mm,
some places he does or has to do most of it. But if he doesn't have to, can you offload some of that or even all of it to somebody else who would greatly enjoy that? That becomes their evangelistic tool, or at least one of them.
mm-hmm. Well, that's a good point too, and it provides another opportunity for someone to use their his or her talents, in a way that is productive for the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Question number 6.
Number 6.
Do my habits mute the influence of Scripture in my life?
Mm.
Now, again, when I taught this, and we kind of had to hurry through these questions because it was right at the end of the quarter as well as that particular Sunday. But I paused on this one for a few moments. I made sure, I talked about this for a couple of minutes because we might just say, well, all he's talking about is time. Am I spending so much time on social media that I'm not spending time reading my Bible or studying my Bible? And that's certainly behind that question, I think. But I also think he just used habits. Are there things I'm consuming on social media so much that they're beginning to drown out the influence of Scripture on my life?
Mm.
In other words, I'm beginning to lean more towards this news agency or that news outlet. What they share on social media becomes really more important than what God says.
Mm-hmm.
And I begin to look on. I can begin to look at Scripture suspiciously because this expert didn't share that on social media, or this expert questioned something about it. And then also, of course, even as preachers, we can get into realms of immorality. Am I taking in things that are, muting the purity? Am I seeing so much immodesty in different things before my eyes, just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling? that it begins to have me, mute that I need to be pure in my life. And so we need to
Mhm.
be really, really careful about this and not only limit it to just the time concept, although that's part of it.
Yeah. And let's not be naive to the fact that, that's exactly what social media is designed to do. Right? I mean, I think most
Mhm.
often we view maybe Facebook as a tool that we can use, but according to the Facebook business model, we it- Facebook is very much trying to recruit us and
Yeah.
keep us on as much as possible. And to that end, it's going to continue to show that's the reason why you talk about ordering something on Amazon, and then the next thing you know, you see an ad for it in your Facebook feed or something like that. I mean, that is Instagram, Twitter, they're all designed to be uh to do that,
I
to
mean,
get
you
us to
you
look. Yeah.
you are the product. That's what
Yes.
it boils down to.
Yeah, that's right.
We we voluntarily sign up for that, but that's what it boils down to.
I'm pretty sure
Uh,
that's in the user agreement that nobody reads and everybody just checks and says, yeah, whatever, so.
page 27, paragraph 7. But yeah, but the idea of just is it holding on to me that way, and it ties also to the next question. And again, even preachers need to think about this. In fact, maybe especially preachers need to think about this.
Mm,
He asks, "Do my habits preoccupy my thinking of worldly and sensual things?"
mm,
Um, and I really appreciated that he didn't just put worldly things or just put sensual things,
yeah.
because if he didn't put both words, I could say, well, I don't think about sensual things. I'm not putting immodesty before myself, or I'm not obviously not putting pornography before myself on social media or whatever it happens to be.
Hmm.
But am I putting so much stuff of just the world that I'm thinking about it all the time because I've scrolled by it so much that have you ever thought about this, Robert? I've had this happen. I admitted this when I was teaching the class, and I said maybe it's just me. But I said, Have you ever been trying to remember something someone put on Facebook or Twitter, and you actually can see the scroll in your mind?
Hmm.
You can act, and it's weird how
Yeah.
maybe I'm the only one who does that. So
No.
maybe the podcast needs to end here and we sing just as I am or something. But you know, but but we've been so conditioned that way. But then the point of this question really is, when I'm not on social media, am I just thinking about just stuff that's going on in the world, and or sinful stuff, sensual stuff? We might even say slimy kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Am I just thinking about that kind of stuff constantly because I'm just filling my mind with it over and over and over throughout the day?
Yeah. I were it not for social media, uh, I would have had no idea that the Grammys even happened recently.
I'm exactly the same way. I'm serious.
I wouldn't have known. But because of social media, not only do I know, but I've seen just the headlines that have told me more than I need to know and more than I want to, more than I wish I knew. And perhaps that's an example of what you're saying there.
Yeah, and does it preoccupy my thinking of looking at the world in a worldly way?
Well,
I see so much of just non-biblical, response and non-biblical opinions and attitudes. Do I
yeah,
start looking at the world that way? And even sensual things. Our culture is just defined by sex. There's no way around that.
yeah.
In the larger culture. Well, if I see enough of that, do I begin to think that way?
Hmm.
Even when I'm not online, because I just put that stuff before me.
Yeah, and it can make me as a preacher be cynical,
Oh, for sure.
at least discouraged. You meet sometimes Christians who, um, they say they believe the Bible, but it's almost like they don't really think that evangelism works anymore. And I just wonder whether that could happen to us too, just by continually feeding. I mean, we're not ostriches, right, with our heads in the sand. We're not
Mhm.
trying to, be detached from society. But I don't if being detached from society means that I don't think the Bible works anymore, then I think I'll just be happily ignorant. you know.
Right. Well, and it is as a matter of yes, we need to know what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
There's no reason for me to preach about, is the New Deal a good idea when that happened in the 1930s? That probably would not be too smart. But am I focused more on that kind of stuff, the current events? I
Hmm.
forget to spend time in the Word of God,
Hmm.
and which one dominates my thinking. That's really what we think about.
Yeah.
All right, number 8. And this could be a podcast on its own. So strap in, preachers. Do my habits build up Christian teaching and the local church?
Oh, wow.
I I'm amazed, and I'm not going to name names because that wouldn't be right. There are some preachers, frankly, I'm amazed still have jobs because of things they have put on social media, basically running down their own congregation.
Yeah.
Um, I can't believe they still have jobs, but even prior to that, I can't believe they would do it in the first place.
Hmm.
Um, I don't really understand at all how somebody can get up on Sunday morning and talk about how wonderful the church is, and then jump on Facebook and talk about how dumb their elders are.
Yeah.
Or I can't believe, I mean, you mentioned COVID a couple of times. I can't believe we're still wearing masks and the church, 2 miles away isn't. Who
Hmm.
cares?
Hmm.
I mean, I have opinions on those things, but does it really make any eternal difference? And is Facebook the place to have those conversations?
Yeah.
It is not the place to air our dirty laundry. And a lot of preachers, you know, at the very least, toe right up to that line. And I've seen several that I believe cross it and basically airing the church's dirty laundry. And it is not the place for it. We be building up the church. Are there? It's not that we're Pollyanna. Yeah, we've got struggles, we've got difficulties, we've got frustrations, but Facebook isn't the place to do that because the world's watching.
Yeah, that's right. And we need to be mature enough, first of all, to sort through, the fact that frankly most of the issues like this are going to be issues that just don't matter, right?
Hmm.
you know, and then secondly to know that if we disagree with something or if there's negativity going on, maybe behind the scenes or under the surface, not everybody needs to know that sort of stuff.
Right.
And to be mature enough to let it run its course and hopefully eventually die out. We preach Ephesians 4:4 through 6 all the time, the 7 ones, right? We'll stand on those and preach them, and we're sound on them. We don't preach Ephesians 4:1 through 3 nearly
Exactly.
as often.
You got that right.
I'm wondering, in what universe do some Christians think that you can get online and say whatever you want to about your brothers and sisters in Christ or about the church or about the elders or whatever, and you're also fulfilling, endeavoring to keep the unity of the spirit in the bond of peace? I just don't understand. There's a disconnect there in our understanding,
There it is.
and
And
preachers
preachers need
need
to
to
lead the way.
model this behavior,
That's it. That's it.
especially when others don't.
And there's probably not a perfect way to do this, but I think there is a way to share some things on social media that come out of a place of frustration or difficulty. But before you hit, post or send or tweet or whatever, to write those things in a way that encourages the good.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
we've got a problem with X, Y, and Z. Well, I'm not going to share that on Facebook, but I'm going to say, hey, how about we encourage people who are doing A, B, and C, and they've been working hard.
Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
that may have come out of a place where I was was really frustrated with something, but there's a good side to it, and the world needs to see that good side. That I know these churches are struggling right now, but here's something good going on, and we have got to be building up. And I appreciate him saying Christian teaching. I think most people who listen to this program would do that, but also
Hmm.
just the local church. It's just not the place to air our dirty laundry.
Yeah, that's right. And we have to keep in mind that it's God's pattern that Christians are quote unquote organized locally.
Hmm.
So just as much as we preach about the one true church and Christ is the head, and he's the only one that can add you to it, Acts 2:47, on and on, and we know whatever you want to talk about the one true church. I mean, the local congregation is a part of that, fulfilling the overall plan of the one true church. So yeah, we ought to protect it and uphold it and respect it.
Yeah, and just going back to what you said about Ephesians 4 real quickly,
Mm.
this is not original with me. I can't remember where I heard it the first time, but I've heard it many times. Is nobody's really going to listen to Ephesians 4:4 through 6 if we're not practicing Ephesians 4:1 through 3.
Yeah, that's right. Mhm.
So, all right, question number 9, and kind of similar to the last one. We don't have to spend much time on
By
this
the
one
way,
because
I'm so proud of us because I mean that wasn't any time at all that we covered that one. That could have
yeah,
been a whole
we
episode.
could.
So I'm just I,
We can
I'm
start getting examples off of Facebook and
I'm going to be watching on Facebook to see how many people comment about how great we did on that
exactly,
section. Yeah.
absolutely.
Anyway, sorry.
I'll share this post 1,000 times. So, this one is similar, but just a little bit different angle. Number 9: do my habits center on what eternally benefits myself and others?
Mm.
And I
Hmm.
appreciate him saying my habits. Yes, we're gonna every once in a while we're gonna share, that our kid won the football game, or As
Yeah.
we're recording this, the NCAA tournament's getting ready to start. My favorite team won, or whatever.
Yeah.
That's fine. Or just pictures of our family, or those sorts of things. Those things are fine. But are my habits, is the overall flow of what I'm sharing on social media just about me, or just about the world, or just about sports, or is it
Mm,
stuff that reminds people, God's still in charge here. The Bible is still, what's important here.
mhm.
And are we sharing it so much of that stuff that it just, floods social media with good things and eternal things, and not just the mundane?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. As preachers, sometimes you may there may be a guy that I don't really struggle with airing dirty laundry on Facebook or whatever, but and I find myself doing this too. I don't post a whole lot unless I'm frankly sharing one of our podcast episodes or something relative to the church at Gold Hill Road. I mean, that's kind of what I do. But I can be that person that just shares news articles all the time. This is something Christians ought to be thinking about. This is some Christian, and I've done some of that stuff before, and then I think, I don't regret posting that. I think that was a good thing to do, but it wasn't intentionally uplifting or, encouraging or good in some way. And to be able to make it a habit, as you say, where periodically I may post some of that other stuff, but I want my overall tone to be this. And social media, by the way, gives us a wonderful opportunity to do that sort of thing. There's so many times in quote unquote real life that I wish I would have worded something differently, or maybe, tempered my nonverbal communication a little better, or smile more or whatever. And on social media, like, I get to curate everything
Yeah.
about what it is that I'm saying. And
And you can go
so,
back and edit it.
yes. And so I really ought to be my best self on there, but
Yeah.
I'm often not.
Yeah. When uh, when we started meeting back, reopening from, I hate the word reopening, but
Yeah.
moving from online only to in person worship. I try not to preach all the time about that, but I did preach one sermon fairly specifically about it,
Mm.
and I got really blunt with our at one point,
Mhm.
because at that point this would have been probably August or September, so all this had been going on for 6 7 months, and I just said something along the lines of, for the past however long that had been at that point, 6 months, 7 months, you know, everybody on earth knows how you feel at this point about, social distancing, about masks or no masks, about, at that point, the social justice matters are still going on. So how do you feel about that sort of stuff? This was before the elections. I even used the words. I said, they know how you feel about Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. And then I just said, scroll back through your social media feeds and ask how many people know Jesus because of you.
Mm.
And as preachers, we need to ask the same question. A lot of times we feel like we got to put our opinion on every last little matter. And if somebody followed our social media feed, they wouldn't even know we are a Christian, much less that we're a preacher.
Yeah. That's true. And the thing too is it's so easy for us now. You don't have to know how to make a graphic in Photoshop or Canva or something. You go pull something from House to House, Heart to Heart that they shared, or somebody else, and share that as well, and make that a part of what you're doing to try and help other people
The
to come to
Light
know Jesus.
Network.
Ah, what do you know? Hey, I didn't do the plug, but you did, and I appreciate it. No.
But there is, in all seriousness, what you
Yeah.
said is important.
Yeah.
There is a place for sharing, not just here's what Fox News says or CNN says about something, but, here's a sermon I watched last Sunday from whatever Church of Christ, and it's great.
Yeah.
Encourage, and just say, you don't have to share like, this is the truth. Make sure
Yeah.
how about this? This encouraged me. I hope it encourages you too.
That's
That's
right.
enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the tone
Mhm.
um, that needs to be shared, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
All right, so number 10,
Number 10. All right.
and this really should hit more, I guess we might say, more of our personal lives as preachers, not necessarily are in the office and that sort of thing. Do my habits disengage me from the people God has placed directly in my life? And then when I taught the class, I added just a short list: people in my home, my church family, at work, or anywhere else I happen to be.
Hmm.
And as a husband, as a father, as a son,
Yeah.
as a preacher, as a Bible class teacher, as somebody who tries to work with young people from time to time, and on it goes. Um, am I so engaged in my phone, I'm forgetting there's people actually in the room with me?
Mm.
and I can do the same thing on social media. That I'm more worried about what somebody in Montana thinks about a post that I shared yesterday than I do about somebody who's sitting in my Bible class.
Hmm.
I'd be really, really careful about that as a preacher, that I'm neglecting the people who God's put right before me, face to face, or in the same room as me.
Yeah. And I wonder, I'm trying to keep tabs on that with myself, just as we're thinking about, right now we have a number of people that are with us in person as we're worshiping. We still have a certain number of people that are with us online. And I don't want to neglect the people that are online, the people that
Hmm.
are older and compromised, and whatever the situation is that makes them feel like they need to remain where they are. But I also don't want to be so focused on them just because it's broadcasting out that I neglect the people that are actually literally right there in front of me. And
My
that can be
wife is the one who
difficult.
pointed that out to me.
Mm,
When we first came back to in person services, and we were really trying to make sure on the announcements and different things, that we're happy for those who are here, happy for those who are watching on live stream, and I would mention it in sermons from time to time, and
hmm.
and finally, I can't remember how she actually worded, but she really made me think. She basically said, if we weren't in COVID, if this were just some random Sunday in September of 2019 or something,
Ah,
would
in
you
the
even,
good old days.
yeah, she's like, would you even mention the live stream?
Mm,
No.
yeah.
And it's not because we don't care about people who are watching, but we became so focused on the technology that we forget there's, at that time for us, there were 50, 60 people in the building. Thankfully now we're well up over that, but
Hmm.
you know, the people who are watching on live stream don't really expect you to go, oh, and by the way, you're going to stand and sing on your couch, but you don't have to do that. They don't expect that. So it's not that we don't care,
Yeah.
but we need to remember the people who are actually in the room with us, and not cater not fully cater, I should say, just
Hmm.
to people who aren't in the room with us.
Mm, yeah, that's a good point. Wow. 10 challenging questions that helps us to have an appeal about social media. Again, you need to check out this book if you haven't done that. And
Yeah.
this isn't like a plug fest or anything for for Tony Reinke or whatever. But 12 ways your phone is changing you, and it's a neat book, mostly because of just how practical it is. And I don't know, there's not anything quite. It's fairly unique, I think. Is that a fair way of putting it out? I mean, other people have written about stuff like this,
Oh
but
yeah. The
his
thing that I
approach is
remember,
pretty unique.
yeah, the thing that I remember when I read it, was I was amazed because I thought it would just be. I knew this guy was a Christian, the broadest sense of the term.
Yeah.
I thought it would just be like, God wants you to throw away your cell phone.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, because
Yeah.
but the breadth of research is unbelievable.
Yeah. It is.
I mean, in the same paragraph, you'll read something that Jonathan Edwards wrote, 300 years ago, and then something was on MSNBC 6 months ago. It's unbelievable,
Mm-hmm.
and just the depth of research will really, really make you think about matters. And again, I'm like you. I'm not endorsing every word of every page. I'm not even close to it.
Yeah.
But if you want a book that's going to make you really examine, specifically your smartphone use, but he ties social media to it a whole lot in there for obvious reasons. That book will really make you do it. I know when I finished reading it, I began to unfollow people on Facebook. I'm still friends with them because I don't want them to know I've left them.
Mhm. Yeah. Right.
Um, yeah, and I also decided, you know what? I was spending way too much time on Twitter for no real reason
Yeah.
except just, hey, I saw this person one time across the room, so I guess I should follow them on Twitter. Um, and I went from following on Twitter something like 400 and something people to following like 40.
Whoa.
And it's since gone up a little bit. I follow a couple more like college basketball writers and a couple of people that I'm truly friends with.
Yeah.
What I didn't realize was I went from, I don't know how much time I'm spending on Twitter every day, to like a minute and a half.
Hmm.
I can scroll through those 40, 50 people in no time and be
Yeah.
done. It's like, wow, what was I doing before?
Yeah. That's true. As a lot of the questions that we've discussed certainly applicable in a broader range. But I just want to encourage us as ministers and preachers to take these to heart, as we said before, and to really consider the intentionality behind why we do what we do, and maybe to go back through, Adam, like you said a minute ago, and scroll back through your feed and say, okay, what's the impression people are getting of me and who I am, and it's a really neat thing. To be intentional about befriending, maybe you have a a guest that's come to worship services multiple times and they live in the local area. And after a while, when it wouldn't be creepy, you can send them a friend request.
Hmm.
And so if they get on there, like, okay, this is the preacher for this church. They're scrolling through, what's that guy seeing? And
Hmm.
realizing that, listen, like it or not, I'm a representative of the church. I mean, every Christian really is. Perhaps as the preacher, some people view me as like the spokesperson. Like it or not, true or not. I mean, that's the way that the perception is, and
Sure.
I want people to get a good impression of what the church is. It's not just me. I don't really care about the me standpoint, but just what do people think about the Lord and His church because of what it is that I post, and
Right.
that's where the challenge really comes in.
It is. And the other thing I'll just say real quick, we've kind of hinted around this, but I want to say it specifically is social media, in my opinion, especially Facebook, because it's, the most where you can have
Yeah.
comments back and forth and that sort of thing, is not the place to dig in your heels on something.
Yeah. Hmm.
On really, in my opinion, on much of anything. I'm not saying we just, give up and never post about morality or
Hmm.
anything along those
Right.
lines. But yeah, we get so defensive about stuff that may or may not matter. Now, obviously, if it's scripture, it matters. But just one quick example, you may know this, Robert. 'Cause you're one of the people that I still follow on Facebook. So,
I'm so honored.
but
Thank you.
yeah, you may not follow me. I don't know, but
I do.
uh,
I do.
oh, okay. But on Sunday mornings, I don't know where I started this, but just for the fun of it, early on Sunday mornings, I try to share something funny.
Those are
Just
fantastic.
yeah, I usually pick some GIF, and it's like, it's those things you see, like, the first time you see someone after COVID or something, just something silly. Well, about 7 or 8 months ago, I shared one, and I really do think through what I'm going to share. I don't be offensive. I want to just genuinely give people a smile on their face on Sunday morning. That's the whole point of it.
Mm,
And I shared one, and somebody left a comment, and they weren't mean about it. They really weren't, but they obviously saw that post in a way that I never. Not only did I not intend it, it never crossed my mind.
mm.
And there's a couple of ways to handle that. One would be to jump in with another comment, and say, "Well, here's what I meant." Blah blah. My response was really simple. I deleted the post. It wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
Because if that person thought that, I mean, this was supposed to be just something to bring a smile to somebody's face. This wasn't, this wasn't a lesson on, on cursing or something.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't a moral issue. But sometimes even those little things, we think, well, I put it out there. They're, they hate me. No,
Hmm.
just drop it. It's not the place to dig in your heels.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. And there have been times when maybe I've shared a sermon recording or something, but I kind of view Facebook kind of like leaving a tract with somebody. My
Hmm.
hope is that they'll be interested and click and read and
Hmm.
just sort of contemplate it privately, and then if they want to reach out, they can, or if they want to come visit us here, they can, or whatever. But that's sort of my approach, right? It's like, I don't know, knocking doors or something. That's kind of the
Hmm.
way I view it. But if somebody does engage publicly, and I get the impression that it's a little tenuous, what I try and do is just take it to a private conversation.
That's
You know,
100% what I try to do too.
yeah, I think that's more effective that way. And it even though it's like the same, you're still typing to each other. It feels a little more personal. At least
But it
know that
also,
we're one to one on this here.
and it also doesn't invite other people jumping in
Right.
and just building camps,
Yeah.
which is what comments become. Oh, you hate Robert Hatfield, but no, I had a question about this and I disagreed, and then it becomes you end up not talking about the issue at all. I will say I've done that too. I try to do it from time to time, and when I do, I try to remember. I'm not 100% at this, but I try to remember in the comments to say, you know, I'm reaching out to you in private so we can discuss it that way. That way, people don't just think you just dropped it.
Oh yeah. True.
Because then it's like, well, they attacked. He shared an article about whatever homosexuality or something, and someone attacked it. Well, he's backing off his position. No, he's not backing off his position.
Yeah.
But this is not the place to have a 700-person argument. This is Joe over here had a question, and so Joe and I are going to talk about
Good point. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you don't want people thinking that you just left them high and dry.
it. Hmm.
Oh, good thoughts. But we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're listening to this, send us an email. Preachers
Leave a
at
comment on Facebook.
leave a comment. I was going to say that, but I feel a little hesitant to do that. Well, we would like to hear from you. The Facebook group, Preachers in Training Facebook group, is a great way to do that. And frankly, that's part of the reason why we keep it a closed group. And I try hard. That's not even the place to like share your congregation's live stream or something like. We try and keep it focused on preaching and ministry. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about some of this, and maybe if you want to share what your struggles are. Frankly, they're probably all of our struggles too. We can
Mhm.
probably relate to that. Social media as it relates to preaching and ministry. Let us know about that in the comments in our Facebook group. Send me an email, preachers at thelightnetwork.tv, YouTube, wherever you happen to be consuming this content. And by the way, Preachers in Training releases Thursdays when it comes out. It's been a while, but we're back now from thelightnetwork.tv. And you can subscribe either in your favorite podcast player or on YouTube. We'd love for you to be a part of that. If you haven't checked out the video version, I don't know that it's anything special, but it's another way to consume the show. If you would like to do that, you want to see our smiling faces. You couldn't see Adam when he face palmed when I said it comes out sometimes on Thursdays, but it happened. Check us out. Search for The Light Network on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. And I'm told if you ring the bell, that means you'll get notified when we release a new video. Find out more about us at thelightnetwork.tv. Check out not only Preachers in Training, but one of the other 10 shows that releases on a regular basis. I think that there's something there that you could appreciate and enjoy. And if you're looking for positive content to share, I think there's something that would be compelling for other people. And I don't say that as a means of promoting myself or any of the hosts, but just something that I think the truth of God is valuable. And so share that. Whether we're talking about the heart of money management or seeing God's glory in every book of the Bible or straight talk for teens, we got something for everybody. Check it out, thelightnetwork.tv. Adam Faughn can be found in Paducah, Kentucky at the Central Church of Christ, or of course on the family blog, faughnfamily.com. You guys have new content on a regular basis on the website there, right?
We do. We try to produce three.
Daily.
Yeah, everything but Tuesday is the
Okay.
plan. There's usually an article on Monday from my dad, Jim Faughn. Wednesday, you have to put up with my stuff. I've heard those become really good trash. Print them out and put them in the compost pile. Thursdays, either my mom or sister, and then every other Friday, Leah and I produce a podcast. So that's the schedule, and we try to keep up with.
Yeah. Why do you hate Tuesdays?
Just it just.
That's gonna be my social media argument of the day. Is Adam Faughn hates Tuesdays? He
It
says
is, and I'm gonna come after you.
Okay, that's good.
With 600 comments as to why Tuesdays stink.
Okay. Okay.
And if you disagree, you hate me.
Okay. Right. Of course. I saw someone post on social media recently, and they literally said, "Come at me, bro," at the end of it, and I thought, okay, maybe that's not the way we ought to be doing this, but
Pretty bit strong.
And on that note, that's going to do it for this edition of Preachers in Training. Join us next week. Jerry Barber joins us to discuss 5 important lessons from the School of Hard Knocks. And if you've heard Brother Jerry speak before, it sounds like he's the president or the dean of the school. He talks about it a lot. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Brother Jerry Barber next week. Until then, I'm Robert Hatfield. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Let's go preach the word.